Welcome back to Depraved and Debaucherous. Why narcissists get way more action than everybody else. That's a story that your Tango put out recently. We're going to talk about it. A narcissist always lets you know when they've arrived and when they finally leave, after they've exhausted everyone around them with tales about how wonderful and superior they are. So, the idea about narcissists that we don't really take into account is that they're not going anywhere anytime soon. The chances of them dying off are pretty obscure. What's amazing about why guys will prefer to be narcissists is because they get more sex than the rest of us. Narcissism is a highly adaptive component. So far, it's easier than other disorders to be passed on to future generations. If you take two narcissists who truly believe they are the greatest things to have ever existed, allow them to procreate, the offspring will have two egotistical parents praising them and putting them on a pedestal 24/7. You're only going to get another narcissistic child to become a more narcissistic man or woman. Just how it is. Narcissists get way more action than everybody else. And this is an interesting story about more sex, more action. So guys think having the ego, having this kind of mindset and be able to kind of control somebody gives them a chance to get what they want. So here's what a university professor at University of British Columbia, Jessica Tracy, she says that, quote, "When you're talking about truly pathological narcissism, it's hard to say why it has not been eradicated. But when you're talking about the more everyday kind, it's equally hard to see how it would disappear since it's so adaptive. You replicate yourself. Narcissists are very good at doing that." Northwest, they talk about when it comes to Kanye's kid, right? Kanye and Kim's kid is going to be worse than their parents. And that's predicting her future. Narcissists tend to be pariahs in the community with their cocky ways. Both men and women are still drawn to that, at least sexually. The confident one in the room or the bad boy guy who really go home at night alone. But who wants to deal with that type of ego on a regular basis? Not I and probably not you. But that's why narcissists have yet to rise to a position of wholesale domination of the species. We're still taken by the short-term effect. Because the narcissist that is a bad boy, or is a guy that's going to be like kind of an attitude, women are still drawn to it. Doesn't matter what age. And the early age, yes. And at the same time, you're talking about people that are probably going into hookup culture off the bat when they're young. With the woman the same way, where she can kind of talk the talk, and there are some guys that are definitely drawn to that. And a woman can also be very much pushy and shoving, and also can. It's one thing to be confident and have high self-esteem, another to be truly believing you're better than the rest. But we know that what this story doesn't tell us is the fact that there are narcissists that are out there that are doing this because they're basically psychopathic liars, sociopaths, because they will tell the story that they're more important when they really aren't. Now, some of them are going to be based on reality, based on real facts, because they might be smart and they've gotten an attitude about it. But let me just put it to you like this. A lot of guys that are narcissists, they're not as smart as they think they are. They're not as erudite as they think they are. They're not as intuitive as they think they are. They're just not. It's a few things to gotta really consider and put into account when you look at this type of behavior. Because it comes up so much. I want to add one more story into the mix about the 6 unsexy habits of people who always get what they want. Now, here are the unsexy habits. So, again, in the same vein of narcissists that get what they want, there is the way to get what you want without having to go through the narcissistic attitude. Maybe some of these tips might have a little narcissism in it. Let's just find out. Number 1, ask and be specific. You have to remind yourself that people aren't mind readers. This is especially if your guys talking to girls. Play dumb. Assume the girl's not going to understand what you're saying. It doesn't matter how smart she is, because it can also be just a way for a woman to just go ahead and play off, because she'll just play dumb for you because of the fact that maybe she has to have you be tested before she decides to talk to you. help others come up with your idea. So if you mention a new idea to someone, the initial reaction is often a defensive one. If you help them come up with the idea, suddenly it's not them giving you what you want, it's them doing what you want. Right. That you're not insisting on an idea, you're recommending an idea and getting their take on it. I use that trick quite a bit, as a matter of fact. Watch your work. Communication, both verbal and nonverbal, is super important in any conversation, but especially when you want others to be on board with suggestions. You have to avoid things that will make them defensive, or they will less likely to agree with you. And this is from Emma Sapala, a Stanford psychologist and the author of The Happiness Track. I've used this one too, where when you talk about, say, instead of, you need to stick to your share of housework, try, I would like to change how we divide chores. That's kind of an employee-employer type of thing. To be more constructive. To make it where it's a we issue as opposed to a you issue. So it's not a personal attack. I get that part. Really listen. Within 8 hours, we forget up to a third of what we heard, according to a University of Minnesota study. 75% of that information goes in one ear and out the other. Which is why sometimes I get something, I might have to retain something, I have to write it down somewhere. I've gotten really bad to the point I need to go ahead and write something down to remember it. Unless it's something that's so important that I asked about that I wanted to just retain. So there's a couple of ideas off of this. Good listening is like meditation, where you tune out other thoughts and be present with that person that you're talking to actively. You ditch the smartphone. You don't have to stare, but, hone in on the person's face so that you're not wandering around picking up something else more interesting in the environment. And try to give a recap of the speaker's perspective every few exchanges to make sure you're getting the message right. Follow along, acknowledge what they're saying, kind of give it a little bit of summarization, and then, so what you're saying is this and this and this. So let's just do this, right? That's the idea that they're talking about. So that's a few things you get from your Uncle King podcast on this Depraved and Debaucherous. We'll talk next time.